to the Vox Podcast. Mike and Tim here, and we're so excited. I think maybe we're the only ones that care that we're getting close to our 200th episode, but for us, that is an excuse to do something a little bit different. So we're going to continue a conversation that we started about asking some of our friends about the future of the church, and had a really interesting response back from a guy, because Rick and I were talking, and first of all, I don't think Rick is a drug dealer. I got all these texts saying, "Hey, is he high? Is he really that mellow?"
Just based on his like vocal tone.
Well, just at his demeanor. I mean, he's just so mellow. And it's I just have so much fun with that guy. But it was funny because I literally, within releasing the episode, I got probably 3 texts saying, "Hey, dude, was he high?" No. That's just my friend Rick, which is the greatest thing ever. Now, today, so we wanna just get different takes on this sort of question about future of the church in America, future of Christianity. And we've got 2 people today. One very, very familiar, Andy Bear. Andy Lara is a guy who, a lot of you will know. If you're a newer listener, Andy and I started the podcast together almost 4 years ago. And then he was part of a church that we started. He was a central leader in a church that we started out in Southern California. And so Andy he just has loads of great thoughts and opinions, and I just thought it was totally appropriate, for our 200th episode, that he be one of our featured sort of interviewees. And then I want to introduce you. Some of our listeners will know who this is, but a friend of mine named Kristen Howerton. Kristen, as you'll hear in our interview, she and I go back quite a bit to Rock Harbor, Costa Mesa days. She was on the blog kind of train when that first started, and there was a whole very, very early on, and there was a whole wave of women who were blogging about motherhood, but then that evolved into faith and politics and race and all sorts of interesting topics. And so anyway, she's one of the OG bloggers, baby. And she is a very progressive thinker, part of all sorts of interesting networks and conversations. And so I thought she'd be fun to talk to too. So we're gonna start with her, and excited about that. Again, all disclaimers apply. Our goal in interviewing is just to hear their best stuff. But I think you'll enjoy this episode. It's long, but I think it's really, really worth it. So here we go. Here's Kristen. Hey everybody, Mike here with a friend that is just so fun to reconnect with, Kristen Howerton. I knew Kristen from back, decade ago, which is ridiculous. Probably more than that, right? Because it was Rock Harbor, 03, 04, 05. And Kristen was a neighbor, and just in our small kind of circle, she was a rock star. So we're grateful, Kristen, to have you on. Thank you so much for making time.
And I'm so glad to catch up with you.
Yes, it's so fun. And something you have to know about Kristen was, you were the earliest blogger I'd ever, before I knew blogging was a thing, you were blogging, right? I mean,
I was an OG blogger for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And was it always Rage Against the Minivan? Was that always the
Oh no! I started
what was it originally?
with a very creative title called the Howerton Family Blog, and that's what it was for a long time.
Perfect. When did it become Rage Against the Minivan? When you got one?
No, I think it was like, I just started blogging for family and friends, really. I mean, you remember I was in the process of adopting and people were always wanting updates. And I was just in a bad place of like, I don't want to talk about this anymore because it's devastating, because it took 3 years to bring Kembe home from Haiti. Yep. So I started that blog just as a way to point people to like, you know what? All the info's on the blog. I don't want to talk about this and cry at Playdate. So go read the blog, right? That's really how it started. It was just like update for family and friends. And then over the years, it's like, oh, more than just my mom is reading this. Yeah. And so it morphed into a job. And once I once I sold out, once I started, doing it and accepting sponsored posts and putting ads on the site, it was like, okay, I need to like name this, and it needs to be a brand instead of just like my rinky-dink family blog.
Yeah, but it became, I mean, I don't know how big blogs are anymore. I'm not familiar enough with that space, but I mean, it was a big deal. Like it was for a few years, but I think your hunch is correct that people are not reading blogs quite as much anymore. Yeah.
That was a very unique kind of time and place that I feel fortunate to have been a part of, but I still do blog, but blogging is not the same. It's all on Instagram and Facebook now.
Yeah, that's true. And so, you started, that was like 06 or 05 was when you started that. Yeah. So that's amazing. And Rage Against the Minivan, I just think is awesome. And one of the things that Kristen, the reason we all knew that Kristen would be amazing at writing or speaking or whatever was she wrote these Christmas letters that literally were the highlight of the Christmas season. So I can't tell you any more than that, except they had footnotes and they were outstanding. So what are you up to these days? You still have the blog, but you're doing a lot more than that, right? You've got a podcast.
I have a podcast. It's called Selfie. It is a podcast all about self-care. So we talk about everything from, serums and hair care stuff to, mental and emotional stuff. We talk about anxiety. We talk about boundaries with friends. My background is clinical psychology. Right. And then my co-host, Sarah James, is a beauty blogger. So we're both kind of coming to this. Yeah, it's kind of a perfect marriage. Fun. But I'm also interested in, maybe looking younger or what have you, and she's interested in psychology. So we come together and we have some really interesting discussions just about everything. I mean, we did an entire episode on pubic hair. That was our most popular episode. So it's all over the place.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a topic, we haven't covered yet. So I'm grateful. That's
Mike,
happening.
I'm just here to tell you, if you want to talk about that during this episode, I'm available if that's where you want to go.
Oh my goodness. So that's so fun. How long's that been going?
We've been doing it for about 1.5 years.
Okay, and that's every week. Yeah. And so is there a website, or is it just Selfie?
Selfiepodcast.com.
Yes. Oh, that's so fun. And keyword pubic hair. So that'll be fantastic. Right.
Now, I'm just saying that was the most popular episode. I don't know what that says about the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happened is you sort of became, I don't know if it was through the blog or what, but you became part of this crew of Jen Hetmaker and Glennon and Doyle is her last name, correct? Is that right? Mm-hmm. And that whole, like, there was a crew of bloggers that it felt like, and tell me, please correct me, because I just don't know. It felt like from the outside, it was started with parenting, but then it became much more almost like a parenting as what it means to exist as a woman in, the 21st century kind of, and to wrestling through Christian things and cultural issues. And is that an accurate way to describe that whole, because it felt like that was a whole movement for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think most of us kind of started blogging, maybe about just our day and our family, and it was sort of an online journal. And then I think, for many of us, as our platforms grew, it's like, you know what, this is weird. I have, people outside my family and my circle of friends listening, and there's some things that I feel passionate about, and I'm going to talk about those things. Yeah. So, I started pretty quickly writing about social justice issues, politics and faith and that intersection, race. I have a transracial family, so that was an issue that I always started, wanted to talk about.
Yep.
So I kind of felt like I wanted to steward that platform, like, okay, I have people listening to me, and it's great to tell funny stories about diaper blowouts that are relatable. But I really felt strongly that I wanted the blog to challenge the way people think. And I wanted to push people to really grapple with social justice issues like that, I'm passionate about that. And I felt like, okay, I'm going to rein them in with maybe funny kid stories. And then once a week, I'm going to sneak attack something about social justice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and obviously with your story with the kids, I mean, a massive insight. And I remember you also, didn't you do something on the blog? It was like, what I want you to know as like somebody that you would normally hear from. Like there was one you did, I remember reading, I think it was like a pastor's wife or a pastor's spouse or something. And it was unbelievably powerful. Like it became this sort of safe space for people.
Yeah, that was a really cool series. And I mean, I can't really take any credit for the power of those essays because it was just people writing in. What I wanted to do also was I wanted to give a voice to people that were often misunderstood. So and it was called, like you said, What I Want You to Know. And it was everything from like what I want you to know about raising an autistic child to what I want you to know about having a genetic disorder. And we just once a week got to hear from people in a walk of life that, maybe we weren't familiar with, and people often wrote them anonymously. So they were really vulnerable. Oh, wow. And they were fascinating, although I'll tell you a funny story about that. Even though at the very top, I had a graphic that said it was a guest post series. I would explain it in a paragraph. I constantly had people thinking I wrote them because they wouldn't read them.
Totally. They just read the title of it and go, oh, man.
So, yeah.
Oh, Kristen, I had no idea you had a genetic disorder and you were autistic. That's brutal.
Right. And I'm really sorry about your sex addiction. And so it was, that was kind of funny. But no, it ended up being a really powerful series, and I'm glad that those sort of live on the blog, and people will find them just from Googling, whatever that unique situation is, which is fun.
Right, but before the rest of us kind of got on board, you were, I'm trying to paint a picture where you were ahead of the curve on a lot of this, and obviously from the therapist background. And as a obviously a woman and as a mom and wrestling with all of this stuff, I mean, I think there was a pretty, fairly significant movement of women who all of a sudden had platform in ways that platform had never been given. And
absolutely. I think that's absolutely true.
And that was just super interesting. I mean, to the rest of us going, oh, here are all these really intelligent women who have great things to say, but you'd never hear from them because they're women. And what's that?
I think it shook things up even in terms of, women's spiritual leadership. And I mean, 2 years ago, someone wrote a big think piece about should we be listening to Jen Hatmaker because she's not ordained,
that.
And so I think it was an interesting place, too, where you saw female voices talking about issues of faith and theology. And it ruffled some feathers people who didn't want to hear from women.
Yes. Oh, yes, it did ruffle some feathers. Oh, yes. The interesting thing is that just what happened with that. And I'm searching for words, but that tribe, for lack of a better word, because I kind of put, and I know this doesn't do it justice, but I think of you and Rachel Held Evans and Glennon and Jen and Sarah, right? There's Sarah
Bessie.
Yep. It just kind of as a crew who were doing, they had their own twist. You had your own twists on things, but I look at it as kind of like there was momentum around this whole block of material and voices. And there
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did and does feel like a sisterhood. And I mean, I count most of those women as some of my closest friends. And I think what is also unique about the space when you've got women voices, we truly support each other. Truly. I mean, some of the women that you're talking about have been my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest confidants over the past few years. And so, that was a really unexpected gift and if I had to look back on all of the blogging stuff and everything that's come out of it, I would say those friendships are at the very top of the list in terms of what I'm grateful for.
Was there any negative that came from all of that? I would imagine you got critique and pushback, but did that ever take a toll on you?
I think that I was comfortable with the pushback. I don't know that is true for every woman who has been in that circle and have, to me, it's like, my mom used to say this to me and it's so trite, but it's true. If you stick your neck out, someone's going to try to chop it off. And I have just always felt like that criticism is a kind of the price to pay. If you have influence in any, not just online, anywhere. If you're the one on the stage, if you're the one in the arena, you're going to be the one they're throwing rocks at. Someone is. And as that platform grows, that 2% of crazy people who want to, bring you harm, that 2% is going to exponentially grow. And as your platform grows. And so I always tried to really look at it that way of just like, there's going to be people who don't like this and that's okay. I mean, I was pushing back on, just some things that felt very sacred to Christians. And it's interesting because I think with the advent of Trump, I think more Christians have been a little vocal about like, is this, like complete and total loyalty to a political party within our faith structure? Is this valid? But I think I was asking those questions. I mean, I can remember, this is crazy, but like about 10 years ago, writing a blog post where I admitted I was a Democrat, and that felt like a radical act, which is insane.
Yeah. I think I remember that actually.
Yeah, but that's insane for me to think about. That back then that felt so edgy.
Yes. Well, it is in some ways in a completely different world 10 years later. I mean, it
is.
And so absolutely. I think I actually remember that. Because Orange County, where we were at, is very fairly conservative. And then the Christians in Orange County.
Yeah. But I think that's everywhere. I mean, I went to Bible college in Cincinnati, and I remember there was a Democrat, one Democrat on campus, and you talked about it in hushed tones like, that guy's a Democrat. Like, that guy has leprosy. I mean, it was the one guy, and we all thought he was like a heretic because he was a Democrat. Because that's how I was raised. Sure. That's how the church felt at that time.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Now, this is all part of the reason why I was very, very excited to talk with you about kind of the future of the church stuff, because I think you have a pretty interesting perspective. I'm still waiting for my invitation to Evolving Faith. And what's the goose one? The Goose Conference?
Wild Goose.
Waiting for that.
You don't need an invitation. Just show up. They're both amazing.
Awesome. But I feel like you've just got a different set of eyes. And so if we could just, obviously we're oversimplifying, I get it. All the disclaimers apply, but where do you see the state of the church today, with an eye towards how do you think this thing's going to look in 20 years in our lifetime, let's say?
Yeah. I mean, I will say first and foremost that I feel a deep sadness about the current state of the church. I feel, I wish it was different. I do. And
what causes you sadness?
I just think people are leaving the church. I think that a number of us who grew up in the church still hold dear many things. I mean, first of all, our belief system, but second of all, just the value of the community of church, of gathering, of worshiping together. Those are things that I still value. But I do feel like there are certain things in the church at present that are driving people away and making it nearly impossible for people to find a church home. I think
like,
yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. Well, I mentioned it before, but I think one of them is that very tight marriage of the Christian church and the Republican Party. I think that is driving people away. And I think especially after we saw that predominantly white Christians voted for Trump. And I think it's causing pain and confusion for a lot of people. And I'll even speak for myself. You know, I was raised being taught that we should be caring for the oppressed and the downtrodden. And I was raised believing that we should be looking at the ethics of our elected officials. I mean, I was taught that by my parents, and I was taught that in my church. And I think it has been confusing and sad for so many of us to watch these very people that taught us these values just completely turn against them in the election of Donald Trump. And because he does not exemplify any of the values that I was taught growing up. So I think there's just a number of us that feel almost betrayed. Like, wait a minute, this isn't what we thought the church was. And you know, you've got Franklin Graham and Dave Crowder, of all people, going on a tour right now that is, you know, pushing the agenda of the right. Now, I don't want to say that Christians shouldn't be Republican. Everybody's free to vote, you know, their heart and their conscience. But I think the idea that these have to be married, and I'm just seeing a lot of Christians put nationalism or their political party above their theology and their faith. And I think that is hurting the church at large. It's hurting people in the church, and it's driving people away.
No question. I think that's absolutely true. When you look at if we press into that for going to the future, what do you think? What has to die in the church? Okay, so that's one example, no question. That has to die. Wherever it's found, right? This isn't just a conservative thing. This is if party loyalty, if we've been better discipled by media than we have, you know, then we're dead anyway. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. What else do you think has to die? What else causes you sadness? And why do you think so many people are being driven away?
Well, and you alluded to it too. You know, this kind of fundamentalism, in terms of putting your politics above your faith, this has to die on both sides. And we're seeing the same kind of stuff happening in the ex-evangelical movement. I mean, I don't know if you saw what was happening in the past week, but they imploded on themselves. So, you know, I think that there's just also a lot of schisms in the church, and they are schisms that we're not being able to, I don't know, like, I feel like I grew up and you could have a number of different theological stances, but we could still acknowledge each other as Christians, right? So I grew up actually in a faith tradition wherein water baptism was how you were saved. Right. If you said the sinner's prayer, you're still going to hell unless you were dunked underwater.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm not kidding. Like, that's truly
that's so true. Yes.
That's true. It was, you know, Church of Christ, you had to be water baptized or you were burning in hell forever. Didn't matter what prayer you said at church camp. So, you know, we were all about going and finding everyone and dunking them underwater. That being said, we could still acknowledge the Baptists and we could still acknowledge the Episcopalians. We all still thought they were Christian, right? We didn't call each other heretics and there, all kinds of theological differences, whether you do communion every week or every other week, whether communion is, an invitation to anyone, or if it's, there's so many theological differences that we've gotten over in the last, few centuries, whether or not you're premillennial or postmillennial. But what we're seeing right now is one theological difference that people literally cannot get over, and that is LGBT. Affirming versus non-affirming. And we have a huge schism in the church right now where both sides are saying, you're not really a Christian. You don't really exemplify, you don't honor biblical authority. And it is such a schism that, people are being fired from churches and kicked out of leadership in churches, and churches are splitting over this issue. And I truly feel like if we cannot get our stuff together, I'm going to try not to cuss on your podcast, Mike.
No, it's fine. There's been cussing. There has been cussing.
But yeah, if we can't get it together, this is, I think, it's both driving people away, and it's also ruining existing churches, this issue, and the fact that we have become so split over this issue. And I think so much emphasis has been put on this issue. It's almost become, in some church circles, a litmus test. Like, well, if you're LGBT affirming, then you're not reading the Bible accurately, or you don't, you don't care about biblical authority or what have you. So that issue, I think, is one that we're going to be reconciling with over the next couple decades, I think. Yeah,
no. Man, Kristen, I couldn't agree more. And it's not just the disagreement, but it's how the disagreement is handled that is unbelievably tragic. Because there just seems like, I am totally with you, there's this hardening on both sides. And middle ground, it just gets bombarded with insults and compromise. I just got an email the other day of just like, listen, Mike, there's some of these issues that just don't have middle ground, and and maybe that's true, but I still think that Jesus has this really interesting way of holding things and holding people who hold different things together that the church has lost completely. Which
it does feel like we've gotten so far from the Jesus that we read about in the New Testament. It really does. I mean, and it's fascinating raising kids in this time and place.
Yeah. How do you? Yes. That's great. Go. How are you raising them, knowing what you know now? How are you raising them in the faith, whatever that looks like?
I'm flailing. I'm flailing, to be quite honest, because two of my kids go to youth group at an evangelical church. And then they come home and I feel like I am sometimes dismantling things, like let's open the Bible and let's look at what Jesus said and let's look at how Jesus acted, and let's get back to the basics of who Jesus was. It's hard. It's really difficult. I don't feel like, and I think the state of the church presently, at least where I'm at, but I think this is true in many places, and it feels like you have one of two very disparate options, which is that you can go to, a more modern church, and they may look progressive, and they might wear hipster clothing, and they might wear the fedoras, and they might have the coffee shop in the lobby. But the theology is actually probably not very progressive. And if you really pushed in on many of these churches, you would find that we're not going to let a gay person teach a Sunday school class or lead in youth ministry, but they're the ones who are doing the more experiential worship. They're the ones who, for me, that's a more comfortable worship experience of church. But the theology is hard. Or I could go find a church that's more affirming. That's probably going to be a mainline church. And I'm probably going to be one of the youngest people there by 20 years. And the service of the church, the experience of church is very liturgical, very rote, very scripted, very sacred, very high church. And that is great for everybody who likes that. That's not what I am accustomed with, Right. And I remember Rachel Held Evans and I asking each other, like, can I just find a church that does worship but loves gay people?
Right.
Like,
yep.
You know, where is that church? I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's not here. It's not here where I live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Absolutely. And so for two that don't go.
They don't go.
Yeah. And how do you talk to them, if at all, about faith stuff?
You know, I try to make that an organic part of our life. I will say that one of my kids, who's 12, my daughter, doesn't go to church. She's not interested in youth group. And I have asked her, you know, can we get you involved? And she's hung up on the LGBT stuff. She's my little ally. And, you know, she's like, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go to a church that wouldn't accept gay people. Now, mind you, of course, this church would say that they accept gay people. But, you know, she knows, like, they wouldn't accept them to be in leadership. And that's a hard line for her. I will say, though, what's interesting about her is some damage was done because she got involved in an after-school Bible study run by some very evangelical, very exuberant people. And it was very off-putting for her, you know, because it would just be, you know, an hour of like, confess. And you've got to go save everyone at school. And you've got to be on fire and you've got to think about God all the time. And you got to pray all the time. And it just felt like so much pressure to her.
Sure.
You know, and I mean, I was raised like that. You know, you got to be on fire for God. Right. Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that mean to be on fire for God? Like, you know, and if you're not having your quiet time every morning, you probably don't even love God. And, you know, and so she was really turned off by that. And so it's hard. It's a weird space to be in. I never in a million years thought I'd be the parent who pretty much only goes to church on Easter and Christmas. But here I am.
Yep.
So I try to find other spaces to connect my kids in faith. We go to the Wild Goose Festival every year, which is a very progressive Christian festival.
Right.
I do beer and hymns, and I involve the kids in that when I can.
Now hold on, I'm getting to beer and hymns. So
yeah, we'll get to beer and hymns and what that means. That'll be my next question.
Yes, but keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. It's been a real challenge, and I've kind of found myself in that space of like, well, if the church that I want doesn't exist, do I need to start it? And then I'm like, good Lord, I am a single mom of 4. Like, I cannot start a church.
You already have one.
Yeah, kind of.
You're already. Yes. Now, but you did start this beer and hymns, and I think it's absolutely genius, and it's been so validated by how kind of big it's gotten. But would you talk just a little bit about the origin of that and kind of what it's turned into, and then what bearing does that have on what a church could look like in the future?
Totally. And I think it has a lot of bearing, actually. So I didn't start beer and hymns, but I started it in Orange County.
Okay, so, first of all, you started it. Okay, in my mind, you started it and no one else gets credit. I started the whole
thing.
Okay,
it was all mine. I think it was like 7 years ago. Somebody shared a video of Nadia Bowles-Weber doing beer and hymns with her church. And they went to a bar and they were drinking beer and singing hymns. And I saw this video and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool. I so wish we had this. And then I went to the Wild Goose Festival and they do beer and hymns there. So I got to experience it myself. And I was just like, this is so cool because, you know, you've just got people from all walks of life, people from all different theological viewpoints, just coming together and singing these songs that we grew up on. I grew up with hymns, in sometimes an irreverent way, but in many moments a very sacred way. And I was like, okay, I want this. Like, I want this, and I have to start it. Like, you know, I can't just keep pining for this thing to be where I am. And so I came home and I enlisted 2 friends who were musicians, and I said, we're doing this. Like, we're going to start this. And so we We do it. We meet in a bar. We meet in a very hipster bar that
is Dirty Nelly still?
No, we're at Wayfarer.
Okay, got it.
Which I think when you were at Dirty,
but you were Dirty. You started there, right?
We did. We still do Dirty Nellies for our March show, for our St. Patrick's show.
Yeah,
so we go back. But the crazy thing is we actually outgrew Dirty Nellies. We can't fit in there anymore.
That's awesome.
So, and which is a big bar. So yeah, we in our first year we outgrew every bar we tried. So we're now, the bar that we're at now is actually more of a concert space in order to fit everybody in.
Okay, that's amazing. Do you? Yeah. So what's a format like? What's a typical night look like?
Yes. It is exactly what it sounds like. There's no preaching, there's no proselytizing. It is a safe space for Christians and non-Christians to come, and we just sing hymns. Now, I'll tell you, that being said, it gets incredibly worshipful in moments, Wow. And I think people from the outside are looking at it going like, oh, you're making a mockery, or, this is, this is heretical. Like, we actually take it very seriously. So there are times when we're being silly, we have our traditions. We sing Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, and everybody puts their arms around each other and leans, and we sing Old Rugged Cross, and everyone does a clink of the glasses in the middle. But then we sing It Is Well, or How Deep the Father's Love for Us, and arms are raised and eyes are closed. And all of a sudden you're in a bar that you might have come and seen a show in last week. And it's a room full of people fully worshiping. It's incredible. It truly is incredible. And for me, it feels like the most authentic church I've ever been in. And the beer is optional. I don't even drink beer. We have sober people who come. But it's more about being in a space where you kind of, know that judgment and that baggage that you might have experienced at church it's just not there. Nobody's going to approach you after and ask how your walk is going, which is an awkward, weird thing we do to each other, right? No one's going to, ask how your quiet time is going. No one's going to ask, if you're going to church or if you want to join a small group. It is what it is. It's its own thing. And if people meet each other out of it, which they do, we've had 2 different couples meet and get engaged at Beer and Hymns. But that's really the format. We sing hymns for 2 hours. And
now, if you're leading, do you do a set list?
We do.
Do you talk from up front at all and interact? Do you take requests? Do you? Can anyone stand up and this one I want to sing, and it's karaoke? I mean, how? Just one more cut at like how do you this isn't the right word, but do you pastor it at all? In terms of guide or direct in any way?
Not really. I mean, we certainly are planned, and there are Beer and Hymns chapters, I want to say, all over the world. And if this is something that you're interested in going to for listeners, you could probably find one near you. And every chapter has its own flavor. And I think every chapter has a flavor that sort of matches their own community. Ours is, I will say, a little more produced than others. We're a band for sure. We practice for sure. We have a set list. We show up prepared.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've always wanted it to be not a concert, but more of an experience. We call it karaoke all skate. So it's like everyone is singing. So we'll back off the mics. We'll do a lot of a cappella stuff. We want people to hear their own voices and the voices of the community that's standing there. You know what I'm saying? It's not supposed to be a show. So we sing the hymns very straight. We don't do a lot of riffs. It's not a performance. But that being said, we do plan. We'll take requests, but that would be more like we would take the requests on our Instagram page and then incorporate it into the show.
Got it.
But just because, I don't know, we kind of like to have, we don't want things going off the rails.
Right.
And then on occasion, we'll do an after party, which is we'll kind of end the hymn set, and then we'll just do covers we'll have an 80s night, and we'll just do 80s covers. And so we've all stood there and worshiped together for a few hours, and now we're going to sing Madonna. So we've done covers nights of 70s, of 80s. In February, we do a cheesy love song after party where we just sing the cheesiest love songs, and everybody sings along. We pull people up. One thing we do in the summer that's really fun is we do church camp songs.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to go back in the vault of like, the Lord's Army and you can't get to heaven and all those old funny church songs, which that is a really fun night. Yeah. So, it is irreverent at moments. But I think the irreverence is more about just, us having fun together. I think that there is definitely reverence paid to the words and the experience of the hymns. And in my opinion, hymns are so rich, especially, a lot of the older hymns are so rich in the theology that's all we need. Yeah. People singing those words, I think, is so affirming in their own faith that we don't need to get up and preach, Yeah.
Do you hang out song sheets or anything? Because
yes.
If I'm okay, so someone who has no background, I'm sure comes and then can enter in.
Oh yeah, we hand out hymnals. We hand out hymnals. We create a hymnal. It's funny because we went back and forth on like, do we just want to project the words? But it's like, no, that feels like church. Yeah. Like if we're projecting the words, that feels like church. So everybody has a paper hymnal that they're given when they walk in. We try to make it really comfortable for people who are coming, from any kind of a background.
Yeah. What lessons? So let's say you do start this church. And it's an eye towards our kids flourishing in a community 20 years from now. What's that going to look like? What have you learned from this and everything else that you'd say, no, I think this needs to be a part of it?
Well, I think, I really feel when I read the Bible, I feel that love is supposed to be above all. Mm-hmm. That is supposed to be the, they'll know we're Christians by our love. I mean, and I don't feel like that's happening. And so I feel like a thriving church needs to place that above anything. And that means loving the LGBT members. That means loving the immigrants in their community. That means, loving the people who are oppressed. That means loving, the people who are in a different socioeconomic level. And I think that's really where it has to all flow from. It all has to flow from our love for other people. I think that the people on stage at a church need to look like the community that they're in. I mean, and I'll say this too, when we're talking about, the concerns I have in the present day church, there's just a lot of churches that are real concerned with the people on stage looking like rock stars. And I mean, you've seen it. Oh my gosh, Mike. And I have to tell you, side note on that note, have you seen the Instagram account, Preacher Sneakers?
Oh, it's heartbreaking. And yes, I have.
Because I have to tell you, there's been it makes me think of you because there's so many times I follow it. Let me explain how it makes me think of you, but I follow it and there is a part of me that feels rage.
Rage against at pastoral footwear.
It's just this pastoral like display of it's both consumerism, but it's also just like, why do you need to look like that? And right. And it makes me think, Mike, of when you were my pastor. You showed up every week in your cargo shorts, and your blue button up. And I really miss that. Like, I loved that, just that you were just like, this is me. I'm not trying to get up on stage and look like I'm a rock star. But I'm concerned too with just this. There's a sort of weird celebrity culture in some of the mega churches that's gross to me. Yeah. Why do you not have? Why? like what is happening when your entire worship team looks like no one's over 25, no one's overweight, everyone just went to Urban Outfitters this weekend. What's happening there? Like, those, people should look on the stage. They should look like all shapes and sizes. Yeah. It's just weird to me.
And I tell you what, moving back to the Midwest for us was really shocking because we were in Orange County for 20 years and we just didn't realize how accustomed we'd come to everyone looking awesome and beautiful. And then we show up in Columbus and it's like, these are real people. And when we go back to visit now, like even my kids will notice. Yeah. And it's really a thing. And it is. And certainly it's true of the church at a whole. No question. The Instagram account shows that. Seth wants to say hi.
Hi.
No, this
Seth.
This is Miss Kristen. Hi. You were just a little bitty guy.
Hi.
Yeah, Seth is now 10 and is going into 5th grade. And where are you and Mama going right now?
Haircut.
You're going to go haircut?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yes, very exciting. It took us, I don't know, what would you say, Jay? Maybe 8 years of him throwing fits to get him to the point where he will go get his haircut. So hallelujah. But I think that Instagram account is so symbolic of the shallowness of the image management that's, and it drives me, it just drives me crazy. I'm with you. I can't do it. I'm like, where are the fat people? And we went to a church here that is the hip, young, cool church. And we just couldn't do it for the same reasons. So your church is going to have people who look normal. You're going to emphasize love of everyone. What other things? It sounds like the kind of worship experience is going to be expressive and probably similar to what you've learned through beer and hymns. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think that's a space when I talk about this online. I hear so many people echoing the same thing. It's like a lot of us want that experiential worship that we grew up with, but we want it with a more progressive theology. And it just feels like that's a thing you have to give up when you find it. And this isn't universally true. I mean, I'll say like I visited Jen Hatmaker's church in Austin and they're doing both, but I've never seen anything like that where I live. Right. So it's there, it's out there. But I don't think it's everywhere.
No, I'm sure. I am sure that it is not, because it's too easy to live in the binary or try to cover, whatever it is you really think about these issues. Beneath the, we're welcoming to everybody kind of thing. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think. One of the things that I really felt frustrated about in the evangelical church that I went to for a long time was just also, the lack of concern around social justice issues. And that bothered me. It bothered me that, there would be a big news item and then that Sunday we wouldn't talk about it at all. That we were not concerned with racial reconciliation. That's not a topic that was brought up. Or if it was brought up once a year and it was couched in like, well, we don't want to be too political. And then, which I'm sorry, what's political about racial reconciliation? That should be apolitical, right? Like, shouldn't both Republicans and Democrats want to fix the race problem?
Yeah.
I don't know how that's political, but, they would act like it was this really radical special Sunday. And, it just wasn't a part of the normal dialogue or, figuring out how are we caring for orphans in our community or foster kids in our community or immigrants in our community, which to me, those were the things that Jesus was the most, he harped on it a lot. Like, we hear you, dude. Yeah. We're supposed to care for the poor. We get it. Yeah. And when you have a church that's not reflecting that from the pulpit, that's a problem, you know? And I felt disenchanted by that. I felt, it felt like most of what I was hearing from the pulpit was more personal growth, looking at yourself, or or recruiting other Christians, but probably recruiting other Christians that look like you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So pretty millennials will attract other pretty millennials, and that's fantastic. But what about the fact that we live in a predominantly Hispanic community? You know, like those are the questions that were really bothering me.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. What gives you hope in the middle of all of this? Because I'm with you. I mean, I think we're at a very, I don't know. I mean, maybe every generation feels like they're at a pivotal moment, but this certainly feels more pivotal-y than maybe previous moments.
Yeah.
But what gives you hope about it? Why do you still go on Easter and Christmas or beer and ham? I mean, like what is that residual sort of, I haven't given up on it yet? What is that?
Yeah, well, I think I haven't given up on my faith. And, you know, I think that's what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me hopeful. And I think more and more people are saying, you know what, my disillusionment with the church, you know, capital C, does not have to mean that I'm disillusioned with my faith or with God. And I think that's an important distinction, that, you know, even if you can't find a church home, that doesn't mean, well, I guess I'm going to abandon everything I believe about Jesus and God. And, you know, you can still hold all of that as, you know, as your personal belief system. But I think what I'm seeing that gives me hope is a new generation that's having more nuance, that's letting go of some of these rigid rules we've had. I think we are seeing more people talking about the nuances of faith. I think we're seeing, you know, people being more tolerant and accepting, and people coming back to what Jesus really said. You know, one of the other movements that I've been a big part of is the Red Letter Christian movement that Tony Campolo and Shane Claiborne have really spearheaded. But they invite a group of us.
No, you started it.
I started it. Right. It was started by me. No, but I've been very blessed to be a part of it. But they will invite about 50 of us once a year to kind of go to this retreat center where we talk about all of these issues in the church and how we can, you know, how we can go back and affect change. And it's, you know, mostly speakers or writers. But I feel like I go to that every year, and I feel like it refreshes me because it's a group of people who love God and who want to see the church flourish and, you know, want to see social justice happen. And so I feel like I'm seeing more of these spaces and movements popping up. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Oh, that's excellent. So Kristen, such great stuff. I can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts. How do people find you online? So give us your Twitter.
My Twitter is Kristen Howerton. My Instagram is Kristen Howerton, and the blog is Rage Against the Minivan.
Boom. Boom. That should be a good band name. And you were just telling me you were just finishing up your first book, which
I am.
Exciting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have a book coming out. It'll be coming out with Convergent. It's coming out about a year from now. But I am in the editorial portion. So I've turned the book in, and now I am having people tell me the things that are wrong with it and need to be changed. But yeah, it will be a humor memoir. Predominantly about parenting, although I will, of course, be talking about faith and race and social justice and all those issues close to my heart. There will be a glossary of Christianese. That's a part of the book, explaining some of our terminology. But, you know, it'll be mostly just a humor memoir.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And then it'll be out. When you said like next year, 2020?
I think May of 2019 or 2020.
Okay.
What year is it? What day is it? Yeah,
May
of 2020.
So a year. So exactly a year.
About a year. Yep.
Look at you, big deal. And then podcast is the Selfie Podcast.
Selfiepodcast.com, or you can just find us on iTunes.
Yeah, that's a really clever name. All right, Kristen. So stick around. I'm gonna officially sign off and stop recording. But I want to thank you. After all of this is done, to our Vox listeners, boy, thanks as always for tuning in. So grateful to be a part of your life and for the privilege of doing this. And until next time, friends, thank you. All right, so that's Kristen Howerton. Super interesting, super articulate, a lot of experience on both sides of the church equation, and I thought that was a great conversation. Here's Andy. Andy and I, man, we go for a while on this stuff. He's recording from the beach, which just makes me bitter. He's literally in this truck recording from Doheny, which just is awful. But we have a great conversation. Hope you enjoy it. We are here, ladies and gentlemen, with really, I mean, there would be no Vox Podcast without Andy Lara. There would be no Vox community without Andy Lara. There would be nothing. There would be me and my boxers talking in a microphone and having it not be recorded at all, muttering to myself if there were no Andy Lara. So Andy, welcome back. Hi, how are you? I love that you are at the beach. Tell us about your recording studio right now, if you would.
Yes, I am very much of the kind to build the anti-model of a recording studio. I'm currently sitting in the back of a 2003 Chevy Suburban overlooking the water here at Doheny at the day use site with a lovely view of the overcast California coast.
But for those who are unaware, that's the beach. What you just described is a beach.
What I described, the beach, I guess, is the simple answer. I'm at the beach. I'm at a beach.
I'm thinking of Ohio people who, like, we went on a boat and it was pulling at inner tube, and they told us that there was a beach there. And it turned out, literally, I'm not even exaggerating, it turned out just to be this bed of gravel that kind of led into this creek, and they called that a beach. So I just want to, for some of our Midwest, dock. It was awful.
It was the boat loading dock.
It was awful. It was just like somebody had dumped tons of gravel on the side of a body of water and said, "This is a beach." And I just want to say, no. Andy is looking at the Pacific freaking Ocean as we are sitting here talking. I am looking at a couple of big pine trees out my front window. So not bad. But it ain't
not
that.
Bad. Both nature. I mean, hey, we both have nature in view.
We do.
So I guess that's a beautiful thing.
But see, in summary, this is Andy Lara. What his recording studio is the perfect expression of his person, which is unconventional and creative and organic. And so, Andy, I will never forget. I mean, literally, there would be no podcast if you weren't a part of this thing, and we didn't have a conversation in front of the house in Placentia that said, "Hey, I'd love to start a podcast," and you were like, "Hey, I've actually been thinking about this too." What has changed in the 4 years in the podcast world since we started this thing?
Oh my goodness, what has changed? Well, I guess to start, I mean, in context to what we've done with the podcast and what you're still doing with the podcast, these kinds of voices, meaning, voices pushing back against the status quo, voices of controversy, voices of desired change. When we started this, I mean, I think could probably count on one hand, how many other shows there were that were really bold enough and courageous enough to kind of enter that space.
Right.
I think at the time, for me at least, I saw this unique opportunity because while those other voices are very influential in their unique spaces of influence. And I think it was at the time, it was like Bad Christian, the Liturgist. I'd throw Science Mike in there. Mm-hmm. Homebrew Theology was kind of one, or Backyard with Theology. Dan Koch was doing some new stuff kind of within the first, 6 months of us starting mm-hmm. that. Mm-hmm. But the unique thing that I think that you offered, and I think we had an opportunity to bring, was someone who was actually like considered a senior leader in a church. That was kind of, I think, what I saw. And you're studied, and you have the clout and all of the scholar background to be able to actually discuss these issues on maybe a bit more, I don't know what the right word is. I'm not going to say biblical level. That's the wrong language. But it's just you're able to kind of you're pulling the leadership of the culture into the conversation. Whereas like for a lot of them, they were acting as people who'd been a part of churches. They were mm-hmm. worship leaders. They were kind of staff, and they weren't necessarily cast, I think, with the responsibility of trying to lead a culture, directly from their previous responsibilities. That said, it seemed to create, we could carve our own space. To mm-hmm. kind of like. Mm-hmm. And it allowed us to say, if we're going to start a church, or if that's an opportunity, then that's something maybe we could do, and let's see what happens. And since then, I mean, there's countless podcasts, 3 years times. I mean, and it's hard. It's amazing because as much as like you try to look at, well, what happened in that year? It's like, oh, well, Trump was elected. So, but it's like, no. It's like, that's not even the whole of it. Right. I mean, the Me Too movement happened in that time, mm-hmm. and then Church Too happened to follow up to Me Too. So there was other big cultural kind of time bombs that went off within the church, which then, mm-hmm. I mean, we got that. We have all kinds of articles that posted about women in leadership that went massively viral, in which people, got big on those. Beth Moore became this incredibly prophetic, woman's voice in the social media space, which I think for a lot of people was not expected. Yeah. And that was really, really cool to see. Up to yesterday, there's articles that are being posted about whether or not she should be, stay with her association. And so it's that's what's amazing to me, is it wasn't just like one thing. It was all these different layers mm-hmm. that then cracked open the space. And it's neat because that's not to say that we're due any credit. I don't think we did anything mm-hmm. so special that everyone followed it. I think it was just a very, well, I think more from the bigger conversation of the podcast industry is mm-hmm. that podcasting just became a household name. In the past 5 years, I think it really became much more of a household name, even though it's been around for the past 15 years.
No, and
absolutely. So it became an alternative form of primary media for people mm-hmm. to be able, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I just listen to podcasts. Or now choosing music or choosing a podcast are equal. It used to be like, well, I'm listening to music. What else would I do in my car? It's like, I don't want to listen to talk radio because you were only given what you were given. Now you were allowed to select what you want to be influenced by. Totally. So it's just, and it's generational for sure. I think it's, mm-hmm. It's my generation, the Zennial kind of pre-millennial into millennial generation that was really wanted to grab onto new ideas and engage in conversations that were meaningful to them. And I think that really just cracked open the space in the past 5 years.
Absolutely. It's absolutely crazy. Where do you see it going? Do you think, obviously podcasting is here to stay, but I wonder if there is a point of saturation. Do you see this evolving into anything? I mean, because you've started some other stuff. So how do you see the state of podcasting now going into the future?
Well, my approach to podcasting and most conversations with helping others start a podcast is just recognizing that it's now a viable and realistic marketing tool. So, and it can be used for one of two ends. Like one is the first that I just said. You use it as a marketing tool, much like you might use video or graphic mm-hmm. advertising or anything like that. Or you can be driving it to be an actual business itself. I think there's definitely two different roads for how you accomplish success in both of those directions. But that being said, I don't think podcasting is leaving anytime soon as a marketing tool. Yeah. I think it's probably one of the most accurate might be the wrong word, but I think it's one of the most interesting marketing tools in the way that it allows you to develop a deep buy-in from those engaging in your product or whatever you're doing, much more successfully than print media or even video media as far as that stuff goes. I mean, I think your ability to attract, all in types of customers or your audience, you have a much better success rate doing it through podcasting. So I have a lot of reasons for that. But then on the business side, it's I think if you're trying to start a podcast to be its own business, it's a long road and it's a hard road, but it's all about if you want it or not. And you just got to do all the things to really ensure that you're committed. I mean, and it's more like, in my opinion, it's kind of like the real estate market. It's like something you have to you got to commit to this thing for a year, because then you got to build that back catalog. Because then once you have that back catalog and then you build your audience, now you've got something that you can, use to sell products to and whatever. Right now, obviously in our experience with what we did with the Vox podcast was, can a podcast have a community? Now, right. So in this case with like nonprofit type of work, and even if you want to look at small business work in the health space, this same idea works really well. Like if you are a runner and you do a podcast on running and health, well, I can't be an audience member of that podcast and not start running, right? Like, what's the point?
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, I love listening to this like marathon podcast. Oh, do you run marathons? No. It just doesn't. Why would you listen? It's useless. Yeah. So it's things like that. You naturally want to start participating with whatever that podcast is offering. So in the case with us, the question, can you start a church from a podcast, was a huge question to try and answer. And I think it was absolutely true. And I think we proved that's absolutely possible. So how you sustain that community and serve that community, I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. And
how do you, so one last question kind of about podcasting and stuff, and then we'll get to the church. Where do you see yourself moving forward? Because you do consulting now, right? You've started a couple of other podcasts. Like what's the stuff that is super inspiring to you right now?
Yeah. Well, things I'm learning in this space, like strategically, it's one of two things. The two other shows I produce and engineer are both in the disability space. So, one's focused on Down syndrome, one's focused on, all people with any disability. So I love those, shows because they're very, close to the chest, and, I just love being involved in those shows and producing those. We just did a live event show a couple nights ago. It was great. It was in the warehouse in the back of a floral shop, and
nice.
It was just cool, right? I mean, and it was probably I think we had like 25 people, and it was like intimate, but it to me, like being in the room and doing that, kind of like when we used to do our live shows, to me that was like, this is why I do this. That was the best part, right? Because it was like, now there's faces, now there's people, and when and then when we hit stop recording, now I get to go talk to those people and I get to know them, and so now I have like personalities to connect to on the other side of the microphone. Like to me, that was really like the best part about getting to a point of having a show. So I'd love to continue producing other shows. I think specifically in the disability space, I'd love to kind of spend some time there and help people find their voice and find positive and healthy influence in that space, because it needs a lot of it. We need a lot of advocates. We need a lot of people working hard in that space to make some things happen. And then also the second part is probably then sharing what I know, because I think in 5 years time of producing shows, developing marketing content, developing community from shows, I've learned, I think, a lot of unique things that I just think would be unfair to keep to myself. And so that's kind of my next 3 months here over the summers. I'm going to be working on actually a curriculum that you could buy. And so there's kind of, I got to sit down and cut like 50 videos. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Master class. With Andy.
I mean, it'll be a full curriculum that's, kind of, basic launch, kind of intermediate, and then like advanced, where like if you finished, I think, my advanced course, you could almost feel going out and probably even producing someone else's show. So that's where I'm really showing you everything that I know.
Awesome.
So
I would say, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I interrupted you. I was just going to say, I think the thing that has surprised me most on our journey has been the amount of community that can be generated from a podcast as opposed to a radio show. Right. Or other media, right? I mean, there was a physical expression, absolutely, and there are physical expressions sprinkled wherever. But even just the online sort of stuff that we learned was super fascinating to me. I just didn't realize, I would have always said, well, of course, the flesh and blood stuff is the best stuff, and I still think that, but that isn't the only stuff. And it surprised me over the last 4 years how tight-knit a community really this has become. Right. And that's the coolest part.
Yeah, and I think I think the most important thing to remember with that is you have to be gracious and fair to its reality. I mean, I think there's some people who get on a high horse who are like, well, that's not real relationship, and that can never be real community. And I think what we're learning in this day and age that social media interaction and communication is a norm and a form of structure that people feel safe in. And in some ways, people will feel safe to really share their thoughts in that way because, they are behind, a digital mask and a screen to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, it's like you can, you're able to filter out people who are really trying to have a healthy and a rich discussion. Yep. And I think it's very fair to see people who take that seriously. And I think it actually takes a lot of work to have a very nuanced dialogue on social media. It takes a ton of disclaiming, you have to very much set up, here's the tone, here's the posture, because if you're just going to read it as words on a screen, then we have to learn to be careful of what we're reading, and we really have to kind of hold out the benefit of the doubt. And so, which is easier to get past when you're having a face-to-face conversation between tone and nuance and the way people talk. You realize, oh, this person isn't threatening, but then obviously online you have to kind of pause and like, okay, what am I reading here? Is this a threat?
Right.
So it requires actually more work to make it happen. But I think when you can actually do that, you almost have more interactive resources you can work with, right? Because then people can post links, they can show photos. Yep. It's a whole other new language, and I think that's really the choice. That's right. If you embrace the new language, you actually almost have this other dynamic of relationship that others just simply don't have.
Mm-hmm. So let's take this conversation and apply it to Christianity or the church. They're obviously not synonymous. And say, okay, it seems like we're at a pivotal moment in for many cultural reasons, but it feels like we're in a pivotal moment of our understanding of what church is and could be, and so the interesting question that we've been wanting to wrestle with is, okay, well, what's the future? What's the future look like? And so I'd love your thoughts about within our lifetime. What is, and pick any of these questions to start with, but one would be, okay, what do you think the church is going to look like in 20 years? In its good and bad. What is a flourishing church going to look like in 20 years? What are the things that cause you a great deal of concern that you feel like have to die in order for the new language to kind of bear fruit and be embraced? Right? Why don't we start with that one? Because I think I would guess you got some stuff there. What do you think has to die for newness to be embraced as it comes to? Let's just keep it to the church for a second.
Yeah, man, I don't. It's interesting when I think about it that way. It's hard to articulate that there's some kind of coup to instigate to overthrow like something so systematic, right?
Right.
And where I'm going with that is just like, well, let's kind of like talk about the problem. Like, and I've talked about this before, but I think it's incredibly important to remember. So when we look at the boom of the information age of the past 20 years, with internet, with exposure of content to everybody, it's much like kind of how America is, if you will. Because, for example, like America, while its actual population is so small in context to the rest of the world, it's such an influential power because it's leveraged so much of its ability to communicate to the rest of the world its ideals. So therefore, it's the Western mindset is very much in the belief that the American way is the only way, right? So you can absolutely stamp that on the church because you've got, your upper 2% of churches in America are big mega churches over 5,000 people. Yet the churches that most people know about or think church should look like is only represented by that 2%.
Yeah.
When we know that over 50% of churches in America are like less than 100 people, right?
Right. Yep.
So and when you the stark contrast between economic dynamics from the church of 100 people versus the church of 5,000 people, you're kidding yourself if you're that church of 100 people and you think you're supposed to look like that church of 5,000.
Right.
Like that should not be your trajectory. It should not be thinking, how do we become that? Because they do not represent the whole. If anything, they've learned to leverage the accessibility of assets in order to share the message in the biggest way possible. And they believe, in all of their rightness that that's evangelism. Well, how can we just, share this message as loud and as proud as we possibly can, leveraging every tool that we possibly can? The unfortunate byproduct is now that most churches believe and think that that's how they're supposed to do it in order to actually be the church. And that's where I would say is a very big problem. So, but then it's layered with then America's obsession with celebrity. America's obsession with like the belief that a single personhood drives an idea. Now, there is successful, for better or for worse, some of the most successful ideas in American, pop culture have been driven by singular people. Steve Jobs and Apple. You can't get away with talking about Apple without talking about Steve Jobs. You can't get away from talking about Microsoft without talking about Bill Gates. These
music
were all,
and Eddie Vedder.
Exactly. You can't get away with talking about music and Scott Weiland. And so... and so,
ouch.
Point being is that it's more like it's just a fact, for better or for worse, right? Because the crazy thing is when you watch every documentary about Steve Jobs, everyone is like, this guy's an asshole. It's like no one likes him, and yet the world loves him. Right? It's this incredible, ironic paradigm that what he created has so much powerful and positive influence, and yet, right? Yeah. So it's but the thing is, we have this same problem in the church. Right. So it's perpetuated continuously as they reach to leverage the other ways in which they can gain their followership and their quote unquote like numbers dynamic for their influence, meaning Instagram, right? Meaning any like form of imagery is what drives people to continue following this thing. Well, because they're the ones who could pay for the highest video productions, the most camera gear, all of the better stuff follows where the money goes, right? Right. I've lived in Orange County my entire life, and I can't even tell you and name more than 10 small churches. And I'm fairly certain there's at least 100. Okay. Why? Well, because I don't see any of their marketing content. Probably because they don't have the money to hire someone to do all that marketing, right? Yeah. And so what am I supposed to believe? They're not successful churches? Right. Well, that's it's like, if that's my measure of success, well then sure. Yeah. But I think that's the problem, is that's how we are measuring success. It's the only way we measure success is like looking from the outside and judging it based on its visual appeal, its followership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's quote influence.
Yeah, exactly. But, if it kind of leans towards then talking about preachers and sneakers, right? Too. So you have this guy who started a joke account to kind of just like roast on all of these, prosperity, driven, pastors, but it's even beyond prosperity. It's a lot of some of the biggest evangelical leaders as well. And, everyone, talk about stirring the pot, dude. This guy like blew up overnight. Totally. But the thing is, like, I think subversively what he was calling out is the power of image. Yeah. It's like, that's the more that I think our culture just blindly follows and believes that there's power in the way something looks, then the church is just going to fall off the rails. If that's it's like, if you're asking me where the church is going and where do I see the biggest problem, it's that we have lost sight of how to participate and I think measure the fruit of the Spirit. If we can spiritualize it for a second, right? I mean, because there's just overwhelming, and the fortunate and beautiful thing that's happened through Preachers and Sneakers is that there's been some people who have been said like, well, why didn't this guy just try to like reach out to these pastors and have conversations with them in the back room, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, all of us have been trying to do that for years. It doesn't work. They don't want to listen. They don't want to receive an email from some random guy at some small church who's kind of like, hey, I think, maybe there's some issues with like you walking out on stage with your Gucci shoes, right? They don't care. The unfortunate part about it is that it required social shaming in order for them to even respond to the issue, because it was a response in mass to their followership. It was like, without the followership, there would have been no response. And I'm like, that's a problem. So beautifully out of that, the guy has had actually good conversations with a number of some of these pastors now who have actually said like, you know what, I get it now. It makes sense. And they've actually taken some of the critiques very well. And so it's actually become this very beautiful kind of process and dialogue to help discuss like, what are we telling people who like would never have even that amount of money in their lifetime, let alone you just, whatever. So, and there's lots of critique there, but I think that's the biggest systemic issue in America, I think, is that the constant belief that a singular person has more power than you and more ability to like live out the gospel in a way that's beneficial for community is a lie. And it's just like, no, each and every one of us is made in the image of God. And right. And it's like, you've already been released. You already have permission. Like, stop waiting on the church to give you the opportunity to do something. Just do something. That's really, it's like the image doesn't matter. The only image that matters is the image of God. Like, what are you doing to share and give people the integrity and humanity that they deserve? Help them see, that they were made, in the image of God. Like that's what I don't see taking place, in that. I see people then mimicking their fashion choices and style based on those people. And that is not the image of God. And that's my problem with that. Yeah.
So the whole image management thing has to die, but that's just emblematic of a much deeper issue of how we're defining success because you don't ever, you go to pastors' conferences and the person leading a 30-person church isn't up there giving advice. Yeah. But they could have been there for 40 years and they know everybody in the town and whatever, but it's the person that's got the biggest growing or fastest growing church, whatever. I mean, it always struck me that we would rank according to growth. Because lots of people love Taylor Swift, but that doesn't mean she's any good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just not, that's just a hypothetical.
Yeah. Well, I think, even in that analogy, I actually would say Taylor Swift might have a pretty long-standing slow growth model. I mean, from looking at like young 15-year-old Taylor Swift country pop artist, slow growth, the transition to pop artist, and then expanded on her mass. I mean, and I got to give the girl credit for spending millions of dollars of buying porn domains so that they could not be bought for that purpose. I mean, stuff like that, you're like, that's okay. There's something that's amazing. Versus like, it would be more, I think, to say some one-hit wonder shows up and everyone leaves their fandom from their long-standing artist to just follow the next one-hit wonder. That's what we're talking about, right? And so it's just, that's the drag of that analogy.
Got it.
I think.
Got it. The no Taylor Swift analogy is forthcoming for me anymore.
You need more Pearl Jams.
Oh, bro. So that has to die. What do you think are the things that could replace? What do you think a healthy church is going to look like in 15 years? What's going to grow? What's going to grow out of that? Out of the forest fire of these days?
Man, I mean, I think if you're going to correct, I think the physical expression of the church. I mean, for one, the only thing I would say I'm trying to correct is probably the bigger model. Because I don't know that I would say I need to correct the small church that's only 100 people where that is the status quo.
Right.
Because if they're sustaining, then perhaps it's because they're actually reaching their people in the right and healthy ways. Like those people are there because the church is actually serving them well. You know, I mean, if a church is able to continue at such a small rate, then, and that's obviously related to socioeconomics based on their area. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems in Orange County, to my previous point, is that your ability to afford a space to rent, you know, whether you buy a place on a corner or not, is just not financially feasible if you don't have the numbers. Like that's actually like a socioeconomic conversation. You know, that's not even like you're doing the church wrong. It's like, no, you just can't. It's actually financially illogical. Like it's unreasonable to even try, in my opinion. But I think, like, you know, to correct it would be what I've probably already said about that, because that's a big cultural issue. But a healthy church, I mean, you know, I mean, with Vox, I mean, the three, you know, core values that we built that thing on, and which are continuing to carry on in the people that have been there with it, you know, now kind of ending its physical expression, is, you know, the church should be the safest place to talk about anything. Like, you know, the church should love and serve the world, not stand in judgment of it. And, you know, and really seek to serve and build like the next generation. I think those are three really important values, because they're all very outward focused, but like inward seeking from a spiritual sense. Like, why does a church need to be the safest place to talk about anything? Because you can't deny the fact that people have doubts, people have questions. You need to make room for that. And there's no sin in asking questions. You know, wherever we got that idea is insanity. You know, I mean, your church and your leaders should be able to dialogue about anything. If they can't, that should be a huge red flag. You know?
Yep.
You know, understanding how to, you know, love and serve each other, and not like learning who we're supposed to judge and how you're supposed to carry that out. We've talked about that in extent, like, you know, 2 years ago, early on into the show. Churches still, you know, like, you know, even your regular day-to-day Christians out in the world, like, don't even understand that, you know? It's why our politics are so binary at the same time. You know, largely because of, I think, that value right there. So, I mean, I think healthy churches are like, they're the ones seeking that there would be no poor among them. But this isn't just financial. This is also spiritual. Like, you know, poor in spirit, like poor in, like, you know, needs and just character, and like helping, like, how do you really walk alongside people, you know, without judgment, without qualification, really to hold up the imago Dei in them, to give them integrity, to give them humanity, you know, and not have the in and out conversation. You know, but really have the conversation about proximity and contact. Like, how close does Jesus feel? Is he even close? Is he far? Can you have hope? What does it take to get there? What are the things in the way? You know, like, those are much more interesting conversations to me than, you know, are we doing everything right? Yeah. You know? Yeah. And so that's, so it's a lot of humility. I mean, I think talking about, I don't think you can create, man, it's hard to say this, but I just think it's true, and maybe it's very locale based. It has to be. It's like it goes back to what I said about, like, just the real estate dynamics of cost of being somewhere. If your church is based on surviving, based on its numbers, in this day and age, I struggle to understand how it could be successful if you do not have a strong personality dynamic. Like, if you don't have, like, that singular person that's got that chutzpah to just, like, convince people and drive people and do that type of thing, I think it would be very hard to fill a room if the room needs to be full. Now, right? Now, if there were 4, you know, diverse teachers and influencers and ambassadors of, like, their community and the gospel that were getting together to bring people together, I think you can fill a room. I don't know if you could fill a room in Orange County. I don't know if you can fill a room in the most expensive places in the nation. Yeah. But I think you could fill a home. And I think like you'd have a much healthier expression of what the church looks like, because it's maybe serving the reflection of the community. You know, and I always go back to that too. Is like the churches need to be very sensitive of understanding what their community actually looks like, and like their church. It's hard to say that, like, the church should directly reflect the whole community, because at the end of the day, churches have styles. They have niches and they have genres. Like you're probably not going to approach a lot of black people if all your music is 4 on the floor and everything is just cut and dry and there's not a lot of soul in the way that you have your church expression. I mean, that's just from all of my black friends and my wife, there's a different like way that like they participate, and it's cultural. It is like it's deeply traditional and cultural, and that's not a problem. It's just the way that we are. But it doesn't mean that then you need to create like, you know, Soul Sunday, you know, gospel brunch as a way to reach them. I mean, that's just misappropriation, right? But it's just like, we just got to be fair and just call it what it is, you know, and then do what we can to have collaborative partnerships with other churches. And that's another language I've really been like layering into a lot of like my thoughts, is just like leaning towards collaboration and not competition. Like this day and age, like my generation loves to see companies and churches and brands work together. The last thing I want is someone spending tons of their money and energy competing for my attention. I'm sick of that. Like, show me the goodwill you have in your company because you want to partner with other great companies like yourself to do something great. I will go to that company every single time. I'm not concerned about someone being better than everybody else anymore. I'm far more interested in people looking to work with other good people for the sake of better good. Altogether, you know, whether they're Christian or not, at least they're doing that. And I would much rather follow that brand and choose that brand over the one that, whatever, can deliver something my door tomorrow. I'll wait a week to get a better product if that's what it takes. Because I'm just, that's the consumer choice that we have. And I think that's largely what leans into the change that I'm talking about is people need to reach back and grab their integrity again. Learn how to make good choices. Like if we are quote unquote a consumer culture, which absolutely we are, and we've been shaped that way, then take on the full responsibility of being a good consumer. What that also means then is when you experience something toxic in a church, you need to name it and you need to call it out and you need to bring attention to it and you need to make it a discussion, especially if you see them hurting other people. That's being a responsible consumer, not just walking away from it because, oh, that church doesn't really fit for me. You know, it's just like if we believe what we believe in, we should be leaning towards those harder discussions and propping up responsibility over anything else.
Dang. What gives you hope these days about the future of the church?
You know, more craft beer breweries and great coffee spots opening up everywhere. Most of them, I think, are Christians that run them. I would actually probably argue that per capita, Christians that run specialty coffee shops in the California area is overwhelming. For the record.
Awesome. Oh, it's awesome.
Well, I mean, what gives me hope? I mean, what gives me hope is the fact that the Bible is wider and deeper and more detailed than our imagination could ever hold. And it is an infinite depth of wisdom and discovery and learning, and it's timely to our lives. It organically grows in us year to year to year in contexts and experiences and environments that we actually interact in. So to say that you've figured out the Bible and it doesn't work for you, or that you figured out the Bible and now you know how to tell it like it is to everybody, is absolute foolishness. Because it's just like, and we've talked about this too, like to treat the Bible literally is an absolute discredit to what it is. You know, if you actually take it literally and you appreciate that, well, come on. I mean, it's this endless resource of everything. Because you're tapping into so much texture, so much aesthetics, so much environmental importance to context, to specificity. I mean, come on, like someone who lives in LA has a different life than I have in Orange County, and I'm only 100 miles away. If, in 20 years, if you read a blog post from a person in LA and a person from me in Orange County, we could be in two completely different countries. You know, if you don't understand these cultural dynamic differences and timely environmental differences, political sides, like, you know, our views on environmentalism, our views on the church, our views on all these different things, if you're reading that, you will not get an accurate picture of the purpose and meaning of anything we're saying. And that's just something I'm saying in a 20-year read in an area that is so outrageously complex. So to suggest that we can just jump into the Bible and take it word for word in that same kind of way is an absolute discredit. And so basically the hope that I have is I think that the more, as the information age has grown, I think that a lot of our folks who are desiring to see the full beauty of what the Bible has to offer are now inundated with how many resources we have to illuminate it. You know, we just didn't have this kind of access to this stuff 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And I think it's a great success, I think, even for mankind, that we've developed technology and information so that we can even see more than we saw before. Mm-hmm. And I think that's graceful, and I think that's beautiful, and I think that's something we shouldn't take for granted. And I think we should also take that carefully. And we need to realize in our time and season of how polarized like our cultures are, and realize how the words are swords. You know, and it's just like there is a responsibility in how we use those words and how we hold those words. As we've said, like, it's not about what you believe, but how you believe it. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to understand how we execute that well, and how we nuance that and graciously show kindness to others, you know, with love, before we just decide what their truth is and whatever they need to change is, you know. Yeah. So you see, that's the stuff that brings me hope. I simultaneously would acknowledge that I don't know, I've become a significantly more perceptive person, I think, as I've aged too. So I can't just make outrageous conclusions on the way things are, you know. I mean, sure, but I'm also a data person. So yes, absolutely, the data shows that our country has not been this polarized in, I don't know if ever. And so that's data telling us that that's the case that we've got going on. So, okay, but we just need to do something with that. You know, we just don't like perpetuate the drama of it and just talk about it. It's like, well, we got to understand why that is, you know, and look to be peacemakers in that. And how do we seek out the conversations and the opportunities in which allow us to make those changes in good ways. So
excellent, dude.
So I just think the Imago Dei, to carry that out in our modern day and like to share gospel, I think we need to reclaim the humanity in how we do that. I think we need to let go of the systematic ways that's been accomplished traditionally, and quote unquote traditionally, in the past 50 years of America. I mean, it's, you know, but I think it's had such a profound impact in the way that we believe church is supposed to be, that I just think like we need to re-educate and take seriously what we've inherited, and try to understand what does it really mean to help someone see God, you know?
Yep.
And it's just,
that's it.
It doesn't, I don't think it comes down to sharing with them how great your church is. I mean, that could be a thing, you know, but it's like, at the end of the day, I don't want my relationship legacy to be remembered from my friends who are like, yeah, he was always talking about how great his church was. Like I mean, the second, I mean, and I'm sorry, and I don't know, I mean, I have friends who listen to this too, and like, I just, you know, if you're gonna approach me and tell me how great your church is, I don't care. Like, you know, it's like, what I care about is how you doing. Yeah. How's your energy? How's your stress? You're raising 3 kids. Is there anything I could do to help? That's what I care about. That's what I need. You know, and offer to bring my family food. Can I come over and bring you guys food? Can I, you know, can I bring your wife coffee sometime? I mean, those are like, that's that level of hospitality. That to me, I think makes way for gospel. I mean, and this is, I guess the last thing I'll say about all of that is for me, one of the most profound, teachings that you did, and it wasn't something that you actually taught and suggested applicably. It was something that I picked up on that feels to me incredibly subversive for America, but yet so fascinating to help resolve the power dynamic. Is it's completely commonplace in America to think I'm going to make my space as comfortable as possible so others will be comfortable, which is irony on its own. So the goal is always, is my home ready to bring people in? So then you work towards that posture.
Right.
Whereas when you look at the Zacchaeus story with Jesus, he invites himself into Zacchaeus' home.
Totally.
And he gives Zacchaeus humanity, integrity, and says, you are worthy to have my presence in your home. So can I come to you? Because I want to be with you and I want to know you. It wasn't, and Zacchaeus was like, I'm not ready to have you in my home. He instantly realized the knowledge and the glory, but he's like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, I want to know who you are in your place of comfort. I'm going to put mine down so I can give you humanity and give you integrity. You see,
come on.
That's the thing, is that's the beautiful picture, is I think this day and age when people go beyond themselves and say, hey, can I come to your house and can I bring you a meal? So you're in your place of comfort because I want to get to know you. Forget what I've made my home to do. That doesn't matter. You know, but it's like, I'm interested in who you are. Tell me about you. How could I be a part of your life? Like that. See, that just, that we need that right now. And it's just, I don't think like we're too busy taking sides and putting up walls. We're not willing to walk through other people's doors. And that's where I think, you know, things begin to change. And so,
and that's true corporately. I mean, if you build a church, it's exactly what you do when you build a church, right? In the old way, is you focus on a Sunday service that has these conveniences and this and that, but it's for the comfort of the people who are already insiders.
There. Yeah. Like it's like what we've talked about, and we've had people who said this about Vox, and like I totally agree, and it was like a big reflection of the bigger picture. Like someone who's, you know, a single mom who's been left to raise 2 kids under whatever circumstances, who can barely make ends meet, doesn't feel comfortable walking into a wealthy mom's house where their kids are going to destroy their living room. Yeah. Like they're not comfortable. Why do you think that they're comfortable? So you know? And it's kind of the same idea. Like we had people show up to the live shows we were doing being like, why can't this be the church? Like this feels right. It feels like the aesthetic that I get when I listen to the show. But when they walk into the pack, it's what we call the Church of Vox Community. And granted, it's a really nice facility. And that's what we were able to acquire, and it's what we got. But for people, it felt like the narrative for Vox is significantly grittier. And it felt like the aesthetic, it felt off. It felt actually untrue, I think, of the nature in which we actually dialogue about this stuff. And so it kind of, in my opinion, it worked against itself for the majority of the 3 years of our existence. You know, I think we were always fighting through that tension of, I don't like that we're always in this state of presenting something from a stage, you know, but yet it was very hard to figure out and financially imagine how do we transition from this and still keep the community viable, you know? And so I think that, churches have the same problem, and it's really, you know, I think like if it would be a pretty beautiful thing if you knew about 100 people in your community that were actively pursuing people in their community, bringing them food, painting their fences, doing their landscaping, you know, caring for the elderly, watching their kids so moms can get a break, you know, I mean, whatever. People that would be known for that level of hospitality in a local community, to me, would be the most beautiful picture of the church. That we lost the sense of desiring the image to look like an establishment that existed somewhere that everyone else would go to, but rather you couldn't escape the outrageous hospitality of your Christian neighbor.
Come on. Boy, that'll preach, buddy. You could build something on that. Andy, man, such good stuff. Thank you, my brother. It is so great to see your face and to hear Andy thoughts. And, you know, you're such...
Oh, are we done? I thought we were doing a 2-hour episode for our 200th.
Oh, we could. Listen. Oh, I know that. That's absolutely no trouble. Man. We put, 150 hours out there? Just the two of us. So... that's not ever a problem, but to let you go to the beach and then Seth Erie, we're trying to keep quiet, and he is restless. He's been sitting on the stairs looking at me, and he loves it because, for him, Vox Podcast is Mr. Andy. I mean, there's no difference. He doesn't listen to any of the new people. He does not listen to the new episodes. He's not interested in that. He's very interested in older episodes where Mr. Andy is on the show. So it's really, awesome. Really cute. But my friend, thank you. This is such great stuff. And again, always so great to connect. So, where can people find you right now?
You can find me anywhere on social media as Andy Likes Words.
Andy Likes Words.
Yep, and then my website, andylikeswords.com. And that's pretty much it. That's all I'm doing right now. So,
yeah. Andy does like words.
Yeah, and I'm probably wrong. With everything I said, I mean, the likelihood is I'm probably wrong.
What's the old saying? It's like, I know I'm wrong about 20% of what I'm saying, but I don't know which 20.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
but that's the fun of the conversation is, I think you're right about a lot of it. and I'm thankful to Jesus that he's endlessly creative in the way his spirit moves throughout his people. So I'm hoping it'll be something far, better than anything we could conceive of. Yeah. But it is interesting to me because this does feel like such a pivotal time where the church has an opportunity to either retrench and fight, or to just collapse and say, okay, we're done fighting, or to find this sort of middle thing about, okay, so now we're this missionary enterprise again, which is good, right? When we're on the margins of culture, that's good. And when we're curious about our world, that's good. And when we're promoting flourishing, that's good wherever we find it. that kind of thing is exciting to me.
Right.
So I love this conversation. So anyway, my friend, go.
Yeah. Well, last thing I was going to say, I mean, it feels like an endless defeat, right? I mean, because it doesn't, in the way of Paul too, that Christ only grows in our weakness. It's just it feels like the church finally wins when we actually lose. Yes. It's just this, that's why it's the idea of sieging towards our success feels like a paradox, because it's what is the ultimate success of the church? It's the ultimate success of the church to me is the cast out of personal image in our culture. And it's the full humility that says you love aboundingly without qualification of other to the point in which I don't exist because I was so much helping others to exist. Mm-hmm. It's just, that's, and at the end of the day, that's where I think a lot of the fights that the church has taken on are in vain, you know? And so that's where it's those are fights that are destined to lose. And,
right.
So it's, I don't know, that's in some way, there's this incredible beauty for fighting, it's like baseball, it's like golf. These are games of failure. And in some ways, it feels like the development of the establishment of the church is a game of failure. It doesn't look all that different from early Israel. Everyone wants a king. And it's kind of I think we've seen this before. And we know where this goes.
Right. Oh, into exile, baby. That's where it goes. Exile.
My final words.
Oh, excellent final words, Andy. Man, love you. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Anytime.
So there you have it, sports fans. Kristen and Andy. I love, these are such great conversations and technically they deserve an episode of their own each, just because I think we get into a lot of great stuff and it is a lot. It is a lot of material and discussion, but I like, Tim was suggesting off, when we were just talking about these episodes, that we kind of formed this around a Star Wars trilogy. So Rick and Bonnie were the Phantom Menace, and then Andy and Kristen are Attack of the Clones, which they're not clones in any way, shape, or form. But so I don't know. It's better than Empire Strikes Back, probably. And then next week we'll have our friend Sky, and it'll be Revenge of the Sith. or in this case, Revenge of the Sky. That's the best we could do for trying to group these together in some thematic way. Although The Force Awakens with Rick and Bonnie,
or we could have been
The Last Jedi,
Mad Max, and these guys are beyond Thunderdome today. I guess Thunderdome was the third one, huh? Road Warrior.
It was Mad Max, Road Warrior, and
Thunderdome.
Yes.
Tina Turner.
We don't need another hero, my boy. That's awesome. All right, so anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. The goal is just to provoke thoughts and thinking. We'd love to hear from you always at hello@voxpodcast.com or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thanks again for listening. We are very grateful to be a part of your life. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and in these days give you peace. Until next time, friends, thank you.